Myles Garrett or A.J. Brown? Who gets traded? Jalen Hurts haters are out and about. And Aaron Glenn is saying Jets type of things. This is Kent, and this is Fanatically Speaking. Let's go. Hey, what's up, everybody? And we are in the off season of the NFL, and things are going on. Things are getting there's always these topics that are going on, and one of them is obviously the never-ending A.J. Brown. Will he or won't he get traded? And then Myles Garrett's name is popping up again. It was last season. His name was in trade rumors, and the Browns ultimately gave him this huge contract. He got at the time, the highest paid defensive player. So now the question is, which one gets traded? Do either get traded? They both stay? Is it just talks? I know, especially with A.J. Brown, it's a never ending every day. They can't, even during the season, now to the off season, and now we got to wait till June 1st. It's just never ending with the ESPN and everyone. But first, let's look at the Browns, and will they trade Myles Garrett? Does it make sense for him? Does it make sense for the Browns? So the Cleveland Browns are one of two teams I consider dumpster fires of organizations that are up the top of the list, right? And I'll get into another one later. But first, the Browns are a dumpster fire of an organization. They need all the talent they can get. So a trade of Myles Garrett would make sense for them. Again, he's got the sack record. He's doing what he's doing. But then what else is going on there? You did get rid of Stefanski, which that's good. That was a good thing that had to happen, even though, whatever coach of the year, blah, blah, blah. But something was up, right? Nobody was on the same page there when it came to quarterback. They had Shador, Dylan Gabriel, Joe Flacco, while Diddy Watson's getting, recovered from his injury. So does it make sense? Now, they went the cheap route on head coach. Not that that's a very, appealing job, but it is an NFL coaching job. So a lot of guys might, want to get that job and do what they do. But then they'll go with Todd Monken, who had been with the, Browns and Ravens and teams like that. So they kind of went the cheap route on the coach. And, in trading Myles Garrett, like I said, they need all the talent they can get. They're going to get at least 2 first-rounders, whatever team trades for them. You got to think, the best, if not the best right now, best defensive player in the league. Now, Garrett, to his defense, he makes the big-time money, so he could go, it's not like a quarterback, like Diddy Watson was, was making, and then they're on this, trying to balance this out. Is it they might even have Watson as their quarterback this year, even though they've got Shador coming back. He's getting his number back. But they're waiting to see if Shador's, is he for real? What does he do with some real talent? I don't even know if they're really giving him a fair chance. The best thing for Shador Sanders would be to get out of Cleveland, especially if they're already talking about Watson might have a shot to start. That's insanity, but but for Myles, I don't blame him for taking the money. He asked for the trade. They gave him the contract. You take the money when you get it. You can always get traded, go to another team. You're still going to make your money. Get your guaranteed out of that organization, and that's the least the Browns could do for Myles Garrett. But they're no better today than they were the last game of last season. They might even be worse, even though Stefanski was not good and I don't think had them in the right direction. They had a really good defense. They don't keep Jim Schwartz. That was bad for their, it's just bad look. He's like, okay, yeah, I'm not staying. Y'all don't give me the head coaching job. I'm out. And so as an organization, the Browns, what do they do here? Again, you got a head coach who I don't think anyone in the league would have hired as a head coach. You are still fumbling the quarterback position. and not really, are you really giving him the best around him that you can? Now, to do that, again, you would need more talent and put money in other places than one person. Even though Myles Garrett is so good, it's a lot of money for that team to be paying a defensive player that really isn't making your team win and get to the playoffs. And quarterback is the most important position. And again, they're not exactly, they've messed with Watson's money, deferred and moved it around. However they did it, to help the team. But still, you're paying Myles Garrett so much, but you could get draft picks for him and then get pieces to, help block for a Shedeur Sanders or receivers that can catch for Shedeur Sanders. But again, like I said, these rumors, they're there. They're not like the A.J. Brown rumors. But I just feel like Myles Garrett, he's being wasted in Cleveland with his team. They don't know how to win. Again, it was weird that they paid him because, again, what are you getting at the end of the day? What does that get you? Your team is, again, no better than they were. I think for both sides, it would be beneficial to both the Myles Garrett and the Cleveland Browns to get some kind of deal done. Now, is that going to happen? We don't know. Could not. On the other side, we got this A.J. Brown rumor that never goes away. ESPN will not let it go away. They just continue to try to make all kinds of issues in Philadelphia. The latest, Jalen Hurts, I'll get into that. But A.J. Brown is the one where he is the receiver, and receivers get that. They get that diva name tag, right? And sometimes he seems unhappy. AJ seemed unhappy. He's reading a book on the sideline, and then they win the Super Bowl, but he's then not really satisfied. And then we go into this season, and he's not really getting the ball like he should, and the offense is kind of crazy. And, of course, it always is when they change coordinators, and especially after a Super Bowl appearance. And I mean, anytime they've promoted from within, the offense just doesn't look the same. And then Sirianni gets involved, and it still is just rough. So at this point in time during the season, just like the other times, it's kind of like coaching, what's going on with coaching. But AJ, during this last season, he would seem unhappy, and then he would make a statement, and it was all good. He was like, "You're misreading my tweets." He would tweet just random stuff, make light of it, go out, ball out, maybe for a game, and then it would go back to, couldn't get him the ball. And you're trying to figure out what's going on. His efforts had been questioned, especially in the playoff game. Drop passes. His relationship with Jalen Hurts questioned. Just anything and everything about him has been just the talk, right? And you get that, again, with the big-time wide receivers. But he seems to always say the right things. Anytime things are brought up, it kind of lingers, and then he kind of smashes it. And even when he smashes it, then they bring something else. Again, it seems like everything he does is analyzed, overanalyzed, again, especially on like social media. Now, with these two teams, with this team, with the Eagles and A.J. Brown, what does make sense for them? Well, Howie Roseman keeps saying, he's not trying to get rid of good players. He's trying to win. Compensation is a big hurdle. His contract is a hurdle. The Patriots have been named all off season. There's all these, he goes on these podcasts and he does these interviews and there's all these hints and he's always said he's a Patriot, all this stuff. The Patriots, though, apparently, the latest report that they only want to offer a second rounder for him. Howie Roseman has maintained that a first and second is the price to start a real conversation. And that hasn't been met. The Rams, there were talks with the Rams, and then you get, he's got this list of teams. What is it, like the Bills, the Patriots, the Chiefs, and I don't know the fourth team, and I don't care, to be honest. If you're the Eagles, it's, do you make a deal? You can't do it between, the dead cap the cap hit is just too big right now before June 1st. It's a little better after June 1st, but the old saying, where's there's smoke, there's fire, and it might be true. This all might be true. Everybody's reporting the same for the most part, but the Eagles are not really doing anything to, replace him if there was something to go down. I think they signed Elijah Moore from the Bills, who, friends with A.J. Brown, and then you got, Hollywood Brown, but that doesn't really replace A.J. Brown. And I know Devontae Smith could be a number one receiver, and they're kind of 1A, 1B to me anyways. And then, but who benefits? And if I had to, between the Myles Garrett and A.J. Brown, if I'm looking at it and listening to all the reports, obviously there's been more reports of A.J. Brown. So if you're a betting man, you would bet the Eagles are going to trade A.J. Brown. Do they benefit from that? It depends. I go back to, did the Titans benefit from trading A.J. Brown? And it's no, because they missed on their draft pick. So the Eagles normally don't miss, except on Jalen Reagor, when they pick, especially first round, and lately any round. Howie has been on fire in the draft. So, getting a 1 and a 2 for AJ would be great, but then you got to replace him. Now, on the other side, I know that they still have to, the Eagles and Howie, they got to pay Jalen Carter, and they got to pay probably Nolan Smith, or, Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. There's guys that still have to get paid, so someone's going to be the odd man out. Again, I'm not here to be a general manager. I'm not here to manage their money, and I know there's all kinds of things they can maneuver. But I think they did some things, and Howie's normally pretty good about this, but they did some things before that you'd kind of scratch your head and be like, okay, they had paid Saquon, and then they gave him a raise. And then he had a down year. But that's not necessarily his fault. It was just after 1 year, which he had an amazing year, and they rewarded him, and that's cool. But now, they've paid Jordan Davis, and hell, there's even been Jalen Carter trade talks this offseason, which also came out of nowhere. But who benefits? Does A.J. Brown benefit? Is he going to be happy somewhere else? Does he want to be with a different quarterback where he just gets the ball all the time? Well, he can get the ball, but as you watch, anyone, Orlovsky, anyone who's talked about the, Acho, when they're showing these, breaking down these plays, some of them are, what is A.J. Brown doing? They're basic routes. They're not really, and then again, in that playoff game against the Niners, we're going to get into Jalen Hurts and all this, noise and buzz about him and his, how good he is. But A.J. Brown has a big drops in that game, passes that any receiver in this league should catch. Efforts sometimes on balls that, what is he doing? And that has to be talked about here. And again, I don't think Philly benefits from losing A.J. Brown, but they better have a backup plan if they are planning to just go their separate ways. Whatever's being talked about behind closed doors. I'm not a fan of, as a fan, as the show is Fanatically Speaking, as a fan and definitely a fan of the Philadelphia Eagles, I don't want to see good players leave. I want to make sure they work it out. It didn't work out when T.O. left after his great year with Philly. And, it just normally doesn't when you lose a great player like an A.J. Brown, like a Terrell Owens. It normally doesn't help your team. And again, go ask the Tennessee Titans, how have they been since they lost A.J. Brown? Again, they haven't replaced him. And for the Eagles, even though they have Devontae Smith, you have to replace that talent with something. And if you don't, then, you're going to backtrack. And I trust in Howie. I trust in the team. But as a fan, you don't want to lose a guy like that. But you understand there's a business side too. And if AJ's causing issues, which we don't know if he's causing big issues, but there's got to be some issues because, in the off season, there's just been so much talk about Philadelphia. And it's been about A.J. Brown And then lately, it's also been about Jalen Hurts. All right, so shifting to Jalen Hurts, away from A.J. Brown and all that, now we talk about Jalen Hurts. He is under fire. He is the talk of all media this past week. Somehow the finger pointing of last season has gone from even some to from A.J. Brown. Is he a distraction? What is he doing? To Kevin Patullo and his great, offensive coordinating year that he did not have, or Sirianni coaching, all these things, right? And now all of a sudden it's Jalen Hurts. All of a sudden there was these anonymous reports, anonymous sources wanted to speak out on Jalen Hurts is the problem. And he doesn't like to take snaps under center or run motion plays. Well, to the motion plays, they worked it out with Kellen Moore. They figured out a way, and they won a Super Bowl. So not sure what was going on with Kevin Patullo, but Sirianni lets him make the decision on plays, even the infamous verticals play that ended the season to the Niners with the game on the line. Now, again, I don't know how much truth is to anonymous sources. Who are these anonymous sources? One, if you're going to say something, say it. That's one way to put this. And I'll get to somebody who is, a couple people they're putting their name on it and they're saying, hey, look, I'll speak out. I think all teams, go ask the Patriots, did Tom Brady have a say in what offense they run and what he was comfortable with? Go ask Peyton Manning. Go ask Drew Brees. Go ask any top quarterback in this league that if you're the guy and your team has said you're the guy, they're paying you like you're the guy and you're a winner. And, you're going to get some say in the offense. And Jalen Hurts, I think, has that say. He should be able to have the say on what he likes and what he doesn't like. Now, does that mean that the offense has to be boring and bland? No. And I think, again, we always talk, I don't know where this comes from, because if you watch the Kellen Moore year, it was not even close to being like this. If you watch the Shane Steichen years, it was not like this. It was only like this with Brian Johnson. It was only like this with Kevin Patullo. So to blame Jalen Hurts all of a sudden that he's not a good quarterback and he's the problem with the offense and he don't like to do this and he don't like to do that. Well, again, it seems like, that's just kind of it's par for the course when you're the franchise quarterback. And when you win a Super Bowl, and when you win a Super Bowl MVP, sometimes you're going to get to have this kind of power. So a lot of this stuff is just fluff talk to me. It's fluff reporting. It's bad reporting. It's bad reporting by ESPN, which what's new for them? Again, they crown the Cowboys every year, but now they're shifting. They're crowning the Cowboys to bashing Philadelphia and seeing who they can run out first. Is it A.J. Brown? Is it Jalen Hurts? But, there could be some connection, right? We know Jalen and A.J., they're not best friends, but they do get along. I think they've had issues, but I think it's nothing, to that, as I always say, the T.O. McNabb stuff. I don't think it's that bad. You got Levante David out here on podcast talking about the Bucs didn't worry about Jalen Hurts. They wanted to make him beat them. They were concerned, let's stop the running game and then see if Hurts can beat us. Now, I'm going to come back to this one because we've seen what happens sometimes we've seen what happens when a team stops the run and only focuses on the run, and then what happens. C.J. Gardner-Johnson had Hurts back. He had his back, which was cool. Cool of him, Got to play with him twice, and CJ's all over the place sometimes, but he was basically, like, where is this coming from? Y'all crazy? Like, why are we bashing a dude that has been like this? We know the story of Jalen Hurts. He's had 10 offensive coordinators since 2016, and only once did he have them for 2 years in a row. Heard a report last season was Hurts worst as a pro. That's very interesting. We're about to look at his stats, by the way. And then we're also going to, let's not forget about his playoff success and his Super Bowl success. But let's look. Let's just take a look here. I like to look at what Hurts. What exactly are they talking about in his his career? They said his worst season as a pro. I'm not even getting the wins and losses, by the way. He has a career. He is 57-25. 57-25, 6-4 in the playoffs, so all winning records. He throws for career 64%. Again, his worst was his first year. He only played he started 4 games. And I'm looking at last year and I'm like, okay, he's like he's been worse in his career with percentages. Yards was not his worst, 32-24. 25 touchdowns was his best touchdown year. He only had 6 interceptions. I think he'll take that every day, like from your quarterback. 98.5 rating, not his worst. None of these are his worst, by the way. None of these numbers that I'm looking at is his worst. Now, his lowest rushing yards, his lowest touchdowns rushing. So I don't. Are we counting that now? Are we counting that as his worst season? Not even his worst record. Yeah, so that report, again, bogus fluff that is being reported about Jalen Hurts. But let's just talk about this guy who they say, teams are saying, Levante David says they don't worry about Jalen Hurts. So one game, one team, the Bucs play Jalen Hurts very well, by the way. But he did beat them this year. Finally, the Bucs had their number, but they won. So, okay. Which, the Eagles are a running team, so it would make sense as you game plan against the Eagles to stop the run. I mean, Hurts can run, Saquon can run. That's not exactly a secret. But let's just look at his Super Bowl stats again, because I like to bring up the big games. I don't care about sometimes these regular season games, even though it bothers me as a fan, because I'm like, how did you play like this against this team, right? Yeah, the 4-pick game, against the Chargers bothers me, but hey, it happens to the best of them. So this guy who they are saying is now apparently no longer good enough to play quarterback in Philadelphia, he's the problem, and he's being carried by a good team. All these things that they want to say about Jalen Hurts. Let's just see about that. Super Bowl 57 against the Chiefs. 304 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, no interceptions. He was 27-38. That's 71%. Passer rating 103.4. He also had 15 carries, 70 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns. He did have a fumble that was returned for a touchdown. But there also was a missed face mask on that call. Just saying. And he never got the ball back. Now, again, that's against the Chiefs. And let's all talk about the Chiefs. The Chiefs are a dynasty. Patrick Mahomes is the only other quarterback better than Patrick Mahomes is Tom Brady. So Jalen Hurts did this against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, they did lose, by a field goal. But everyone was talking about how great Jalen played. Passes were on point. Everything was on point. The running back was Miles Sanders. It wasn't Saquon Barkley. And he still put up those numbers on the grandest, biggest stage. Then we go to the next. Then we go to this Super Bowl, the last one that he won, 59. He was 221 yards passing, which I think he didn't even play the fourth quarter. 2 touchdown passes. He did have the pick. Missed block. Threw it up. Got the pick. Oh, well. 17-22, 77% was his passing. Passer rating of 119.7. And he also had 11 carries for 72 yards and a touchdown. Again, against the Kansas City Chiefs, who are going for a three-peat, and the great Patrick Mahomes. Now, we can all talk about the Eagles and Jalen Hurts. He was the MVP. It was a great performance offensively. It was a great performance defensively. It was just a beatdown altogether. But again, look what Jalen Hurts did. And in this game was the game that I'm talking about. Saquon Barkley with over 2,000 yards rushing for the season. The Chiefs said, we are going to stop Saquon Barkley and make Jalen Hurts beat us. And that's exactly what he did. So it kind of, cancels out what Levante David's saying, right? So that they want to make Jalen Hurts beat them. Well, that's fine. That's cool. Again, that's the game plan that you have. Well, the Chiefs took that game plan as well into the Super Bowl. And they got smashed. And it wasn't even close. And Jalen Hurts performed again on the grandest stage against maybe the second, if not greatest, quarterback that's ever stepped on the football field. A dynasty of a team against Andy Reid and the Chiefs. No matter who they have, at what position, what year, everything, Jalen Hurts performed. So why do I bring this up as well? Because I've talked about the Browns. I've talked about the Eagles. And they're two totally different franchises, right? The Browns, again, I said, are a dumpster fire. The Eagles are one of the top franchises in the league. What is it now? Out of the last 10 years, they've been to 3 Super Bowls and won 2. And they're always in the running. They're always at the top. They've had a couple of down years. And not every year finishes the way they want. But they're finishing better than the Cleveland Browns. And you can just tell by just how the organizations run, right? Because you have the Browns, who are, even after admitting mistakes with Deshaun Watson, again, as I mentioned before, they won't rule out him being the starter for this season. They said it was a mistake. So he's been bad since like 2020. All his legal trouble. All his injuries. And he still might get to start for a team who made the worst trade and contract in NFL history. That's what the Browns are talking about. A dumpster fire of a franchise. And instead of trying to build around a young quarterback in Shedeur Sanders, they're still talking about Deshaun Diddy Watson. And how he might still have a shot. Meanwhile, on the other side, over here with this great franchise that's being, in Philadelphia, we got reports talking about not extending Jalen Hurts, a Super Bowl MVP, consistent winner and leader, no off the field issues. And as I mentioned before, we're getting a little of the McNabb T.O. stuff with him and Brown, kinda, but not really. AJ hadn't started doing, sit-ups and his crunches in his driveway yet. But I'm having to do a podcast here, and I'm having to talk about Jalen Hurts possibly not being the quarterback in Philadelphia 1 year removed from a Super Bowl championship and Super Bowl MVP. It's crazy to me. But, I mean, I can compare them, right? Like, we're talking about this, but meanwhile, the media, as they're trying to bring down the Eagles and Jalen Hurts or A.J. Brown, I mean, just speaking of quarterbacks, though, you got the Justin Herberts of the world who gets glazed by the media every single year. He's put as the top five quarterback. If I started a team, I got to have Justin Herbert as my quarterback. Really, what does he do in the playoffs? Oh, that's right. He loses. He loses and he gives the ball away. He doesn't perform on the big stage. It doesn't matter who his head coach is, apparently. He can have Jim Harbaugh. He can have whoever. Phillip Rivers can come back to San Diego and coach. It doesn't matter. But he's still, every single year, we talk about why. Why do we talk about Justin Herbert? Maybe he could be like, maybe he could be like Kirk Cousins. He's still getting paid to lose. They're going to pay him $20 million at least in Vegas to a franchise that's the worst team in the league. But go look at the money he's made in his career. He's got one playoff win, and they still talk about Kirk Cousins. Concrete feet Kirk. The Dak Prescotts of the world, who Can't win the big game with a loaded roster. And that takes me back to Philly because they always talk about Hurts and he's getting carried by his roster. He's getting carried by his roster. Go look at the rosters Dak Prescott had. You think he's just playing with scrubs? You think he just can't win the big one in Dallas? The biggest team in the world that gets all the media, all the TV, all the hype, home playoff games, and still get beat? I know some out there are going to think I'm taking shots at Dallas, but I just want to bring these guys up like these are just a few examples. Are we calling for Josh Allen to get taken out of Buffalo? Why would we? He made the big one. He made a Super Bowl. He keeps losing in the playoffs. He keeps making bad decisions. We're not calling for the Buffalo Bills to get rid of Josh Allen. We think he's God. But Jalen Hurts, all of a sudden, you can't win, right? He only wins because of his roster. There's plenty of teams that would be out here to kill to have a quarterback that makes plays and wins and leads like Jalen Hurts. He's not the typical gunslinger. He's not, he's not Tom Brady. He's not Peyton Manning. And I just say to that, blah, blah, blah. We know he's not. Every quarterback's different. I always go back to Tim Tebow. If you'd have just built an offense around Tim Tebow and not said, hey, stand in the pocket and pass. Not everybody's a pocket quarterback. We've seen Jalen Hurts. We know what he can do with his legs. You got to be able to mix it in. That's just the way it is. Doesn't mean he can't pass. He's just not he's not Justin Herbert, who Justin Herbert can run, by the way. But he's looks and built like the quarterback that everybody thinks you're supposed to look like, right? But now he's getting that Cam Newton, Russell Wilson, Donovan McNabb treatment where he's in his prime. Not only his prime, he's coming off of Super Bowl appearances, winning a Super Bowl and a Super Bowl MVP. It's really close. I heard the comparison that it's like the Russell Wilson in Seattle where Russ was, again, he's the nice guy. He's the leader. He's trying to do the right thing, but then he rubs some people the wrong way, the outspoken players like a Richard Sherman or someone like that, or these guys, and then they don't like the attention that the quarterback is getting, and somehow they turn on their quarterback. Now, Russ still stayed there until finally they, shipped him out. But hell, we're one season removed. One season removed in Philly, and we're trying to run Jalen Hurts out of town? For what? Doesn't make sense. Anyone in Philly, anyone anywhere that think that Hurts is the issue and that the Eagles would be better off without Jalen Hurts, all I have to say is you better be glad you're not the New York Jets. The New York Jets have been in the news. I mentioned them in the free agency episode because they went out and got a certain quarterback. And then there's a whole, picture out there. There was all the quarterbacks that have been, in with the Jets and all this, and they've tried even since, they've got Geno Smith back. So all the quarterbacks since Geno and now Geno's back that they had, and it's a whole clock-worthy, even more. I forgot how many. It's so many. So again, to those people in Philly, like I just mentioned, you want to get rid of Jalen Hurts. Again, be careful what you wish for. Aaron Glenn, though, keeps the Jets in the news because he just said the Jets, oh my God. It was the most New York Jets thing, and it's like, maybe you do deserve to be their head coach. Again, they are the second team I mentioned as being a dumpster fire of an organization next to the Cleveland Browns. But the New York Jets, last season, they finished tied with the worst record in the league, 3-14. Aaron Glenn, by the way. I want to mention it's not just the Jets, but Aaron Glenn and the Jets, because I really want to hit on Aaron Glenn in his comments. So after finishing 3-14, tied for the worst record in the league, taking a good defense, and Aaron Glenn, a great defensive player and coordinator who got this job based off all that, took a good defense and somehow they made them worse. They didn't produce one interception all season. They had 4 turnovers, all by fumble, which was also an NFL record for the fewest in a season. So no picks, and the 4 turnovers they got by fumble was still the fewest by an NFL team in NFL history. And we get to his comments where he says he thinks they found the quarterback in Geno Smith that's going to take the Jets to the promised land. What promised land is that? The same organization who had probably better players at the time, and I know they did, they thought that not Brett Favre was going to take them to the promised land, not Aaron Rodgers, which I think they thought both was going to make them, but the same team that had Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, say that the guy, Geno Smith, the guy who was with the worst of the worst last year, is going to change the Jets. Now, Geno had some good years in Seattle. He really turned his career around, and I do hate to knock Geno, but it's just kind of crazy that Aaron Glenn would say that. Now, who do you blame? The team? What do you blame? Who do you credit? Also, it's crazy that Geno Smith went from the Seattle Seahawks to the Las Vegas Raiders. He left the Seahawks. They replaced him. They won the Super Bowl. The Raiders have Geno. They end up with the first pick of the draft. Yeah, not all on Geno, for sure. But to think that he's going back to the Jets where he was not very good, and he's going to take them to the promised land. Well, Aaron Glenn, my man, I don't know why you think that. You do still know that the Buffalo Bills and New England Patriots are still in your division. I'll give you a fighting chance against the Miami Dolphins because they've blown that up and they've just kind of said, hey, we're rebuilding. We know we're going to suck. There you go. So I will say, Aaron Glenn, I'll go ahead and say that right now. I was on board with you getting fired this year, even though I know guys probably deserve more than 1 year, but you were so bad that it wouldn't have surprised me if they had fired you. The way you lost, the way you coached, sometimes it was almost worthy to be fired after 1 year. But if you finish below the Miami Dolphins this year, you gotta go. I don't even know how you make it through the season if it's even trending that way. The Jets, but the Jets are gonna jet. But again, I don't know what the promised land is. Is the promised land just winning 4 games? You won 3, so maybe 4. Not to mention in the offseason, Aaron Glenn, the other thing, I thought he was a good hire. Not to mention, he fired almost his entire coaching staff. So, he doesn't want to take the blame for the team's failures. They traded away players, Sauce Gardner, Quinnen Williams, again, 2 great defensive players. Now, they got a return, but they got a hit on it. And I'll talk about that. But, he did add Frank Reich as the OC, which is good. I like that hire. I'd have liked him in Philly, but, he had the Sirianni connection. But the Jets get him, so that's a good hire for the Jets. Now, again, can he make Geno Smith and that offense work? They have some pieces. They showed little life last year, but either way, they gave up again. They traded away, Sauce and Quinnen. They do have 2 first-round picks, the 2nd pick and the 16th pick. And that's just first round. But they got to hit on all of them. They got to hit on both of them. Now, with the way the quarterback, situation is in the draft, and I know they've got picks because they suck, and they've made some deals. So, they're not picking a quarterback at number 2. So, that 16th pick I mentioned before, they got, is it Ty Simpson? They got to give it a shot. Geno Smith's not the answer. And Ty Simpson might not be. We don't know. He's getting a lot of praise, but he's getting praise in a draft like, Mendoza's going to the Raiders and, who's going to get a quarterback and when do they get picked. And it's not a huge, but, the Jets, though, didn't go out and really try to get a top level quarterback. The year before they got Justin Fields, and you could say, well, is he a top level quarterback? Is he going to win in that division against a Josh Allen, even a Drake May? Top picks? No. Geno Smith's the same way. I don't see it happening even with Geno Smith. But again, Aaron Glenn saying New York Jets things, they are a dumpster fire. I would expect them to finish, dead last. But again, who knows how, maybe they hit on all of it. Maybe they get that defensive player to make. What's their plan? Geno's not the long-term plan here, so they got to get a younger quarterback in there. But I don't know. I don't know what the promised land is. I don't know what that means. And again, it's funny that this episode I brought up like my favorite team, and I do consider the Eagles a great franchise. But then I have to talk about these dumpster fires, and they're talking about, again, even bring up the Jets. You've got, who are you taking? Again, I want to ask this question. I said, be glad you're not the Jets, but if I'm asking anyone out there, and then I'm in this, the three quarterbacks that I mentioned that they're either starting or now getting talked about getting to start again, who are you going to take? And who should you be damn sure grateful that is your quarterback? And that damn sure is Jalen Hurts, because if you're picking a Deshaun Watson, a Jalen Hurts, or a Geno Smith, you're taking Jalen Hurts all day of the week. So I'll take the winner. I'll take the character. I'll take the champion over these guys and all the hype guys like the Justin Herberts and the Dak Prescotts of the world. I'll take the guy who shows up, does his job, whatever to help the team, all that noise we can kill, whatever you got to do. Number one shouldn't go anywhere. Extend them, do whatever. I know I blended all my topics together. But as for that, this is another episode of Fanatically Speaking. You can listen to the show on all podcast outlets, even listen on YouTube, no video. Follow the show on social media. It is on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. Just keep up with the episodes, what's out there. The posts are there, so you missed the episode, you want to go back, and if you don't want to scroll on the podcast stuff, you can do that. Always listen to the show, like it, share it to other people. Tell them about it. If you like what you hear, comment, follow, download, all the fun stuff that you do, whatever device that you listen on. As always, tap that app. And for this episode, I am out.